Live up to that name. Promises and disappointments. Okay. So, morning session, we're still kind of getting the old buddhi functioning, so it's not going to be, I'm not going to torture you with a lot of complicated stuff yet. We'll do that at 8 o'clock. Yet. We'll bring the board over at 8 o'clock and then break out the pens. So just talk a little bit more. So Venus promises and disappointments. What could that possibly mean? What's Venus do? What part of you is Venus? Huh? Love and comfort? Purity? Relationships?
Beauty.
Huh?
Beauty.
Desire, happiness.
Romance.
Happiness, desire. Yeah, it's you know, the way I look at astrology and the way I interpret the meaning of the scriptures is that, well, it says in Parashara that Lord Vishnu has incarnated as the 9 planets to bestow upon the living beings the fruits of their karmas, to destroy the demons, and to restore righteousness, or to restore dharma. So the planets aren't just big rocks up there moving around. And that's how they look. Just like you look a certain way. You're not just how you look. You have a whole essence, an entire energy, and an entire consciousness and intelligence. Certainly beings like the planets, the grahas that have been around 4.5 billion years are no different. And their energies are really not just overlords externally, sort of like puppet masters giving us stuff and taking it away. They're really the forces of intelligence within us all. So really Venus, we all have a karmic relationship with every one of those grahas, every one of those beings. We have a karmic relationship with them. And as such, they're internal forces. They're forces in our mind and consciousness. And so when we talk about Venus, we're not talking about this rock up there doing stuff to us that says, oh, Venus gives me this. Venus does this. It's a force in your mind. And your relationship with that force shows how you experience those things that we're talking about. Those things of, happiness and comfort and beauty and relationship. And, all the planets and all the signs and all the houses in astrology are under the same laws of the same evolutionary principles that we're all under, which is that we're all evolving toward enlightenment. This is why we incarnate in form, is so that we can evolve from a state of illusion of limitation and illusion of separateness toward our fullness. And the planets have this same evolutionary arc within us. What I mean to say is that we express all 9 of the planets through the same paradigms of body, mind, and spirit, what we call the 3 gunas. Really, the 3 gunas are really kind of like body, mind, spirit. Which guna is body? Tamas. Which would be mind? And spirit? Sattva. Right, so really, if the 3 gunas is a complicated concept for you because it's, Sanskrit words that you haven't heard and you're like, oh, I don't get all that. It's really just body, mind, spirit in a general sense. It's a universal principle in every healing system. And so each of the planets, it's a really interesting and easy framework for you to understand as you study astrology. Every planet, every force in the universe operates through body, mind, and spirit along the evolutionary arc of your consciousness and of your life. Venus is no different. So Venus is a planet that brings, as we said, comfort, happiness, beauty, and we can experience that through the body in the form of what? What would Venus through the body feel like? Well, sex is one thing. Sensual pleasure. Yeah, eating chocolate or sensual pleasure. Like this is why the tamasic guna is so powerful, because we can experience the physical quality of the thing so quickly and get the most immediate impact, because that's where we are in a lot of ways. We're in our body. So let's say, well, first let's just go through the gunas. What would be the rajasic, the mental quality of Venus? Excitement? So the feeling that you get, really Rajas is very much about feeling and a passion and emotion. It's emotion. Like tamas is very much related to form and, solid structures. When it becomes an emotional construct, it blocks your emotional spiritual progress. This is why yoga is really to cultivate sattva. That's really what yoga is to do. That's really what yoga is doing, is cultivating sattva. Tamas is really form. There's nothing wrong with tamas. Every day you return to a tamasic state when you sleep. You lay there like a rock, and you need to, because there's a quality of rest in life that needs to happen. But if your mind is tamasic, then you're not growing. The mind is by nature rajasic, and it's emotional, and it has a lot of movement. So really the rajasic nature of Venus, as it elevates beyond just physical pleasure, has to do with the feeling, the good feeling we get when we're happy. Happiness is what we said. So this was one of the words, right? Happiness, it's the emotion. Each one of the planets has an emotion tied to it, as well as a feeling, how it feels to us. And actually, because we're so emotional, and we run everything through the matrix of our emotions, this is why we have the good and the bad ones. Like, the ones that are good, that we like, are like what? Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, the moon, right? Those are the ones that are good. Mars and Saturn, actually they're all good, but because Mars and Saturn don't feel as good, we have a tendency to avoid them, because we're very emotional. But actually they're all good, they're all powerful. But the way Venus feels to us, in the Rajasic sense, is that feeling of happiness. And what that does is it makes us want to give happiness to others, give pleasure, give comfort. This is why Venus is a gentle planet, and this is one thing to know about the benefics as opposed to the malefic planets. The benefic ones are sharing. So when the benefic planets operate through that sort of Rajasic guna, they're much more likely to give. This is like Jupiter, Venus, Mercury. Whereas Mars and Saturn, when they're operating through that emotional state, tend to want to take for ourselves or protect or that sort of thing. So Venus through the Rajasic guna is about the feeling of happiness. What it feels like when we perceive our environment and we appreciate beauty and we get a good feeling. Much of the good feeling in life comes from Venus. Venus is the idea and the feeling that we want to be happy. That's kind of like 99.9% of our life, right? Actually, much of what we're doing in life is having a Venus experience. We wake up and want to get as much Venus as we can. That's why it's so compelling to us. We want to get up and eat good food that tastes good, right? Not necessarily the food that's the best for us. And then we want to be around people we like who give us a good feeling. They're smiling. Nice, pretty environment. And, yeah, I like you. Right? It's all very Venus stuff. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then what would be the sattvic quality of Venus, do you think? The higher quality, like the most refined?
Devotion. Love.
Okay, love, devotion. Here's a way I look at Venus as an evolutionary principle. And this is really kind of a framework that I work with all the time when I teach, when I do readings, everything. It's a simple structure. When you look at the Karaka, the planet as an indicator, does everyone know what Venus is the indicator of? The Karaka of? You see, here's my Venus stuff. This is my green smoothie. Relationship, yeah. So the way to approach the Karaka, one second. Doesn't that look good?
It just looks like a girl.
Green smoothie. Is the Karaka is the planet that, whatever the planet is a Karaka of, when that thing is happening, it's like the culmination, it's like the events that show the culmination or the real concentration of that planetary energy. So Venus is the Karaka of romantic relationship, but also relationships in general. So think of your early relationships. Whether you're man or woman, they were very much about receiving pleasure. This is a hot girl. This is a cute guy. Women make it a little more complicated when they're younger because it's sort of more emotional, but it's very much about looks and appearance, and we're immature with the Venus energy when we're younger. And it's really very much our early relationships are about pleasure for ourselves. And then we realize that doesn't work very well, and there's a lot of pain in that. So then it becomes, as it evolves, it's not what we can receive and the pleasure we can receive, but we realize that, I love this person and I feel so much better when I'm able to make them happy. So it becomes about sharing. Venus is about appreciation and sharing as it evolves. And once we learn this secret that it's not about my happiness, that I feel better and that I really, that it's much better to give than to receive, we actually learn the lesson with one person first. If we learn that we can love that one person, once we learn that secret, then we learn, and then we learn that it's not just about me, then we elevate that to the highest, and it's not even about a person, it's about the cosmos itself. It's about our loving, beautiful relationship with everything, not just with my beloved or with this person who is right here in front of me. Does that make sense? So it evolves from body and self to others, usually those people in our life, like our romantic partner, our family. Venus has those qualities to want to comfort them, like through the sign of Taurus. Venus is about comforting our family and gathering the Venus stuff toward us and stabilizing it in the form of our family. It's the feminine quality of Venus through the sign of Taurus. That's where we want to comfort our family and feed them and keep everything, gather all the happy stuff and bring it to us and sort of keep it there and comfort everybody. So then once we move beyond that sort of clannish and possessive approach to our happiness, then the Venus in its highest form, or at least in its sattvic nature, becomes very transpersonal. And then it's not about the happiness we receive or that our family and loved ones receive, but it's really just about giving. And this is what devotion is, really. When we say devotion, it can be a kind of empty word, like what really is devotion? What is devotion? It's a good question. You said it, so what is it?
It's the quality of surrendering out of trust in a higher force, So that was when you were asking what is the sattvic form of Venus, sattvic expression of Venus, then I thought about that.
So surrender.
Yeah.
So surrender and devotion sound a little. It's all the same kind of process, but the way you would experience the Venus devotional quality, remember, Venus is motivated by beauty, love, happiness. Surrender is kind of like, it's not like it isn't there, but surrender is more like dispassion. It actually has more to do with something like Saturn, even Mercury, which has a lot of dispassion. Maybe it's the feeling. It's the feeling that comes when you surrender. Would be more the devotion, the feeling you have when you look out and you see the beauty of life and you're not attached to any kind of local form or experience for yourself or experience that has to come from someone else in order for you to feel that. Now what happens if it's maybe what was it called? Excitement and disappointment? What was it called? Promises. The happiness we feel now comes from some external situation. We have a lot of conditions. Hopefully not too many. This is why Venus is exalted in what sign? Pisces. Because Pisces is where, it's all good. This is what Pisces is. Pisces is where we don't have any conditions for anything. Boundaries are kind of blown open, and it's like Pisces is the sign of metaphysical connection to the cosmos, like the thing I just said about surrender. Well, like you said about surrender, but it's not just surrender, it's a state of communion through the heart with all of existence. This is really kind of what Pisces is, where you feel that cosmic pulse of the entire cosmos, like flowing. And so Venus is exalted there because we find happiness in the universal, in the cosmic, in this sense. Not in some external, like, experience that's from my boyfriend or my, or from my meal or from this or my family, and some external thing which is subject to, time, space, and causation, and it's not always going to be there, and it creates as much stress as it does joy. Because anytime we have an attachment or our happiness comes from something external, then there's always a possibility it's going to leave, and this is what happens. We lose ourselves in the experience. So the nature of Venus is to give us appreciation for those people in our life and for beauty, and we can experience it the easiest through the body in the form of, like we say, food, sex, other stimulating sensual experiences. Venus is the part of us that makes the senses enjoyable. That's why it feels good. Venus is the part of us that enjoys it. Venus is about enjoyment, enjoying things. So we experience enjoyment through the physical body in the form of sensual pleasure, and then, which is through the tamasic guna, then the rajasic guna, we experience pleasure and enjoyment in the mind mainly through other people and the world around us and the beauty in the world around us. And then in the cosmic sense, we experience it internally. The sattvic guna goes in and up. Goes in and up. Sattvic guna is inward and upward. So the culmination of Venus energy, and all the energy, is when we go inward and upward with it. And it's to not make our pleasure and our happiness subject to our localized form, like everything. Is that too esoteric and weird? No. So we really experience it in the form of things that we love and the feeling that comes from it. And even the people in our lives and the family and our family and our relationships can be a catalyst for the higher quality of Venus, especially when we get rid of the attachment. Because those things that through the rajasic guna, the people in our lives, they can create either more attachment or more liberation. Rajas is actually very neutral. It's just energy, and it can go toward greater attachment, or it can go toward greater, to a higher elevated state of intelligence and wisdom. So this is why when you do the spiritual practices and whatnot, it elevates that state of appreciation. And what happens naturally when you do spiritual practices in sadhana, you get more appreciation for people. You get more appreciation for, obviously because you get to know yourself more, you get more detachment from all of the selfishness which leads to the suffering of all the planets, but certainly Venus. And it's really tragic when we're unable to enjoy other people or things in life, because we all, enjoyment in life, we're here to be happy. Venus is simply happiness and where we find it. And when we can't find happiness without it being mixed with so much pain that we have all these aversions to it, it creates all kinds of twisted, contorted, diabolical things in our mind, because we're meant to enjoy life. But a great being said, we are here to be happy, but happy for no reason. Which is pretty wise. If you have a reason to be happy, then you have probably 1,000 reasons not to be happy. Here's why I'm happy. Okay, this is here. If it's not, then what? So happiness for no reason. So this culminates in the exaltation point of Venus, stereotypically, in Pisces. Can you see that? Explain.
I think that in terms of the gunas, sort of Pisces is one of the more sattvic
It is a sattvic sign.
signs, and so if Venus is in a sattvic sign, then the qualities of Venus will tend to be more sattvic, whereas you could see a rajasic Venus or maybe a tamasic Venus, depending on the signs or aspects to it. So it's one of the most sattvic signs.
Right. There are 4 sattvic signs, and so the quality of sattva is definitely something, but like for instance, Cancer is a sattvic sign, Leo is a sattvic sign, Venus doesn't do so well there. So just the guna of the sign, at least from an astrological point of view, isn't the whole thing, but yeah, Sagittarius as well. Exaltation points are tricky. That's why I was saying stereotypically, like as an archetype though, it really tells us a lot. What about Pisces though, besides Sattva, do you think? Anybody? Huh? Yeah, inspiration, liberation. Yeah, it's
Is it Pisces?
which is an enemy to Venus.
Interesting.
Doesn't Pisces rule the 12th house of moksha?
Yeah, Pisces is the 12th sign, so it's related to moksha as well. It's related to liberation. Yeah, and like I said, one of the biggest things is that it's very much that part of us that's not of the earth, really. Pisces is really not of the earth on some level. That's why people who have a lot of planets in Pisces, their mind is really one. It's really the sign of that kind of in-between life state, that in-between kind of, there's the sense and the realization of all the karma that's come before, and this sense of surrender. It's really the sign of surrender. It really is. It's where we realize the difficulty with Pisces is not being overwhelmed by the feeling of all the karma that has come before, where you're just like, okay, well, whatever, and you just kind of float and don't have any focused directed action.
It's a water sign.
Well, so there are other water signs though too. Scorpio, Cancer, but Pisces itself is the sign of surrender. And we take our desires. Venus is a Rajasic planet, just like Mercury. There are two Rajasic planets, and Venus is a Rajasic planet where we say, I want to get me some of that there happiness. Where am I going to get it? This make me happy, this make me happy. Venus and Mercury are very much where we look for stimulation and enjoyment in the world. They're worldly, Rajasic planets, Mercury and Venus. Mercury is just interested in everything. He just wants to know how everything works. And Venus wants it to be happy, enjoyable, nice, beautiful. And so a lot of activity comes around those Rajasic signs. And so oriented towards in the environment of liberation, that active passion for enjoyment and beauty gets put in a place where we find beauty in and enjoyment in anything. Happiness for no reason is like, when I heard the person say this, it's like exalted Venus, because I'm thinking astrologically, that's my paradigm. Happiness for no reason, exalted Venus. Because Pisces is a sign that can just hang out and just be there for no reason, and like, what's the sign where we have a lot of reasons and a lot of details and a lot of conditions? The opposite sign. Where's Venus debilitated? This is the difficulty. And again, if you have Venus exalted or debilitated, I'm not talking about your chart, because when you read a chart, there's a whole lot of subtleties, but the exaltation points of the planets as archetypes for how the planets work, which is really what they are, is important, because you get enormous insight into the nature of a planet by examining the exaltation sign and point. Because they're qualities of the planet. They appear in the planetary chapter in Parashara. They're not qualities of the sign. They're certainly not qualities of any house. They're qualities of the planet. So the culmination of Venus, as shown by the exaltation point is in Pisces. That's like the culmination of that energy. So you can learn a lot about that just by examining exaltation points. And again, what happens is people that make mistakes, oh, that's good, so why is my exalted Venus creating so much suffering? Well, there'd be a lot of reasons. So it's not making predictions about what's going to happen. It shows the nature of the graha, though. It's a quality of the planet. So what would the quality of the debilitation in Virgo show? Debilitation point. If Pisces is where we're happy for no reason, what's Virgo? Huh? Obsessed? With what? Obsessed with details. What's wrong with that?
Because you don't see the big picture. You get caught up in the smaller aspects.
Yeah. It's kind of the opposite, where I can find every reason not to be happy. Because once we start having a lot of reasons, it's not going to be often reasons to be happy. It's often reasons to be unhappy. But there is a planet that is exalted in Virgo. Which one is that? Mercury. So why would Mercury What's the difference between Mercury? Why do you think Mercury is exalted in Virgo and Venus is debilitated?
It needs to discriminate. Look at all the details and make distinctions.
They're both Rajasic planets. That think about why you think one is like it's at a place where it's really not doing well, and the other one is like the culmination. I said I wasn't going to make you think, but I can't help it.
It's like emotion versus reasoning.
Mercury is also discriminating.
Huh?
Mercury is discriminating.
And Venus isn't.
Yeah.
One's more emotional, one's more mental function. So in love, we don't really want those constructs. We want more openness.
You said in love. Is that what you said? In love?
For Venus.
Right.
But Mercury wants details and discrimination and a mental buddhi.
Seems like one is left brain and one is right brain.
Whoa. Yeah, and you can see this. There's a lot of qualities of the planets and a lot of qualities of the signs. Like you have to know where to apply things like when the guna works, when the guna is showing the thing, when this is showing. There's a quality of Venus and Mercury. They're very similar, actually. One is related to Lakshmi, one is Vishnu. They're very similar. They rule the same kind of signs. Mercury and Venus are the two Rajasic planets. But they debilitate where the other is exalted. Because Mercury is also debilitated in Pisces, exalted in Virgo. So Mercury is exactly, Mercury is where we need to recognize how things are different. This is not this is not that. Mercury is the faculty of discrimination, where we need to learn from our mistakes, where we need to have, big word coming, ready? Neutrality. It's a neutral planet. Do you know what's the gender of Venus? Feminine. What's the other feminine planet? The moon. Okay, so there are two neutral planets. I already said one, Mercury. What's the other one? Saturn. This is a big part of the planets. All of these little details are the real keys to how to do astrology. Every one of these little details is what tells you exactly why something's going to happen. Mercury is neutral. That means Mercury inherently can lack discrimination. But it's where we need to find discrimination. The way we find discrimination first is to not have a lot of bias. The gender planets have bias. Venus and the moon have bias toward wanting what?
Peace.
Happiness, love. I want happiness, love. Where can I get some happiness and love? Venus and the moon. Right? Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, Sun are the masculine planets. They say, I want some power, aggression, force. I'm going to act. I'm going to take action. And they're biased toward that way. They have a bias. They're part of us that needs to get up and get something done. You don't really want Venus and the moon to do it. You want Mars, Sun, Jupiter to do it, because that's the way they're oriented. You want to be happy and comforted. You don't really want Mars, Saturn doing it. They're not oriented toward it. That's not their nature. You want Venus, Moon. I'm going to talk about the difference between Venus and Moon in a second, but then you have the planets that are neutral. You want to look at things with neutrality, without the passion of this and that. You want Mercury and Saturn. This is their nature, is to assess things. Saturn for a long time. Saturn takes a long look. Oh yeah, I need to assess this thing. How's this going to play out in the long term? I need to make a rational assessment of it. Unbiased. Not based on what I want to do right now, and not based on what's going to make me happy or what. Unbiased. Saturn then makes a commitment. And it's best when we make a plan and make a commitment based on an unbiased view, right? Instead of some passion in the moment or some, but this will make me happy, which is unbalanced. And Mercury is neutral in the moment, right now. We're getting all this information, all this stimulation. Mercury, when he's operating well in you, is the faculty of discrimination that can filter through and say, no, this is just, in the highest sense, this is just the ego, this is just the mind, this is just that, oh yeah, I made that stupid mistake before, I'm not going to do that again. When Mercury is powerful, we have a lot of discrimination. You see that? You put him in Virgo, which is a tamasic sign. It takes things very seriously. Tamasic signs are a little bit worried. A little bit worried, a little bit grouchy, a little bit cranky. Virgo is where we're afraid one of those details is going to get through and be the one that really does us in. It's the nature of Virgo. So when Venus is there, it's always a little worried. I can't enjoy things too much because this might get me, right? So we're always a little bit worried about what we let in. Mercury is faster, it's more flexible, it's more lighthearted. So it can handle that, it handles that Virgo energy very well, and Virgo makes that Mercury more serious rather than just playing. Because again, Mercury inherently lacks stimulation, it lacks judgment. Mercury has no judgment. Judgment comes in Jupiter. Mercury is where we first want to assess things in a very neutral way. Say, I don't know. I've heard that's wrong, but I got to find out for myself. And we gather intelligence about it without judgment. You see this? So in Virgo, that energy becomes, we actually take it seriously rather than becoming overly stimulated. You see the difference? Or no?
When Venus stay in a Mercury sign and Mercury stay in Venus.
That's an exchange.
So let's say when Mercury stay in Libra and
Venus in Virgo.
or in Taurus.
Huh.
Like this one.
What? What was the, you said Mercury in Libra and then what?
Or Taurus, a Venus ruled sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're friendly.
Between the two, what?
Yeah, they're friendly. Yeah, they're friendly, so they support each other. Yeah. Yeah, they're friendly, so they support each other. I thought you were going to say Mercury in Libra and then Venus in Virgo, because then Venus would be debilitated, but Mercury's in the sign, so you have an exchange. So there's a lot of little situations. I'm speaking just more like stereotypically, just to understand the nature of the planets really and those energies. So Venus and Mercury are very similar, but they're different in the sense that Venus is a feminine sign, a feminine planet that wants to experience beauty and pleasure. Mercury actually doesn't have that agenda. It's neutral. It wants to discover things. It's curious. But it's curious about anything. Mercury is the energy that can be on the internet and looking at sacredtext.org 1 minute and then go into a porn site the next minute. Sorry to use such a graphic example, but just no discrimination. Like, oh, this, okay, okay. It could be this mindless kind of lack of discrimination because, oh, what's that about? Not because it's insidious or it's dangerous, it's just childish. It can be like childish playfulness that's not taking things seriously. You see? So in Virgo, it's a serious sign. It's a little worried. So you put Mercury in Virgo, and that nature to do something that's lacking discrimination gets tightened up. But it hurts Venus, because Venus is a part of us that wants to enjoy things, not be worried, and that nature to enjoy life becomes fraught with a lot of condition. Mercury handles the conditions really well, because he's neutral. He's kind of like, oh, okay, this is a problem, all right, I'll just do this. Doesn't get stuck in it.
So Mercury is debilitated in
Pisces, because then no discrimination. That thing I just said, like there's no difference between looking at sacred text or porn. Pisces is kind of like, oh, whatever. Boundaries, or just kind of like our discrimination kind of is lacking there. Mercury is the faculty of discrimination where you actually want to be intelligent about your life. You don't want to keep making the same dumb mistakes. You don't want to keep just doing things mindlessly without, even though you know it's wrong and it's dumb, you either don't recognize it or you lack the intelligence to get out of these certain situations. This is a Mercury problem where we're like, how can I be so stupid kind of thing, right? That kind of, and the culmination of that is what's called Jnana Yoga. Eventually, we become like a master of of every moment that comes, and Mercury is like, oh, no, that's just the thought, that's just the mind, that's not me. And really feeling, that's not me, that's just the mind, that's the ego, that's the mind. Just burning through all of the vrittis, all of the thoughts in the mind that we are attached to all the time. So that's the culmination of Mercury. It's the only one that can do it. It's the only one fast enough to stay on top of every thought. Have you ever tried to watch every thought and stay present to every thought? It's tiring. So, Venus is the feminine sign, a feminine planet, and the other one is the moon. So what's the difference between Venus and the moon?
Who wants peace?
Huh?
Who wants peace?
Venus doesn't? Right, so you just said it, but I thought you were going to say no, because Venus wants what? You just said it. Happiness. The moon wants,
Peace.
are they the same thing? You're not sure? You better get sure. You better get clear. That's what we need to get clear on. So everything that makes you happy gives you peace? No, they're not the same. No. In fact, this is one of the things you do. You look at, and I do these relationship readings where I assess Venus and the moon just for this, to see how close are the things that you think are going to make you happy, which is Venus, which you look for in relationships with all people, and what actually makes you peaceful. It's really nice if they're somehow related. Many times they're not. It's kind of 50-50. You don't really know. So they're not the same thing. Venus gives us... Here's an easy way to really understand the difference between Venus and the moon. What's the moon the karaka of? We already said Venus is the karaka of romantic relationships, right? Venus is actually really the karaka of adult relationships. Two adults who have desires they want to fulfill, who have mutual desires they want to fulfill, is governed by Venus. Of course, the culmination of that is in a romantic relationship. I want you to make me happy, and you want me to make you happy, somehow. And so this dance begins. But Venus is also really important in business relationships. Anything where two adults have a common interest and desire, and they need to work through with each other to fulfill it, is Venus. All right? That's Venus. You see that? I respect you, you respect me, we do this thing. We negotiate this thing, two adults. What's the moon the karaka of? Mother and child. Is that two adults? Is that two grown-ups holding mutual space? Not at all. Totally different. The selfless love of the mother overruns the boundaries of the child. The mother doesn't expect a child to maintain this social equality. Venus is all about equality. It's not about selfless love as a karaka. It's about selfless love eventually. It's transforming that transactional nature into devotion, like we said, but we have to do it through our own conscious will. When it comes to Venus, it's transforming that human relationship and our attachment to desire for people into something that's not just about our own happiness. The moon is where we naturally want to flow with selfless love. Selfless love is what the moon is about. Venus is not about selfless love in its active sense. Just like romantic relationships aren't about selfless love, they're about mutual respect. That's what makes romantic relationships work. It doesn't mean you can't selflessly love the partner, but you can selflessly love anyone, but to have a romantic relationship with them, it has to be mutual respect, not selfless love. Because as soon as one feels like the other is, as soon as it stops feeling equal, it feels like abuse in a romantic relationship. Does it feel like abuse, a mother and a child? Does she feel abused because the baby spits up in her face? No, but what if you're sitting across from your beloved and he spits up in your face? It's funny to laugh, it's funny, but we carry this delusion into romantic relationships, especially women. And that's not an insult, it's because women have a natural tendency as a matter of identity to want to give selfless love. And they feel like but the romantic relationship is not about that. That's not what makes it work. Like the mother-child relationship. Does that make sense? Equal is the case when you go into a romantic relationship and we can tell ourselves, oh, I would have done anything to make it work, but that's not true. It wouldn't do anything. Because as soon as it stops feeling equal, it feels abusive. Immediately. We're always assessing that in a romantic relationship. Am I wrong? No. That's what it is. That's Venus. That's Venus. All the time, that's why Venus is the karaka of that, because we have to, like I said earlier, navigate my desire to want to get what I want and my desire to want to get what you want too. But it can't be at the expense of what I want and this whole kind of thing we do. This is Venus. This is the evolutionary process of Venus, is working through this toward a state of equilibrium and mutual respect, because a lot of the problems with Venus has to do with self-respect first. It's about self-respect. And so with the moon, like I say, the difference is the moon is the love of the mother whose boundaries overrun that of the child willingly. Let's say that the mother let's say the child is 4 years old and a new baby is born, and the child becomes jealous and starts screaming at the new baby, right? Because she's jealous and right? And this emotion of jealousy, right? And the parent punishes the child, makes the child, you can't do that. Is that going to be good for the child? Do you think? No. Because the child doesn't understand jealousy yet, right? The child has a tantrum and throws something at the mother. I hate you! And throws something at him, right? I mean, children, they go crazy, right? What is a mother going to do? That's it. Get out of here. We laugh, but what if the romantic partner did that, right? We would see that that's just not acceptable in a romantic, in an adult relationship. However, many times, this is where we tolerate abuse like this. This is where you see this. Oh, he had a bad childhood, so I'm just trying to love him. We laugh, but I mean, it's not funny, is it? But you see how these two energies, I'm talking about this because this is how these two energies get really mixed up. They get really mixed up in romantic relationships. And also you see parents that don't parent well often also do not have a good understanding of the Venus as well, because the role of the mother in the moon role has to evolve into the Venus role with the child at the appropriate time. They need to be able to assess the child's level of maturity and know how much of the social contract the child can be responsible for at whatever age it is. Right? Because if the child is still getting jealous and throwing stuff at them when they're 13, well, now it's time to maybe have a little talk. Because they understand jealousy and tantrums at that age. And if you don't then start to establish boundaries and start to bring some Venus into that, and say, wait a second, you need to respect people more than that now, then you're creating a pattern in them it's going to take them into adulthood, right? So in many ways, Venus is it's not like it's more evolved, but Venus is the last planet in the planetary order before Saturn. This is why you really need to understand the planetary order. By the way, you all have information that I gave you, like my email and stuff, my websites, and I have all kinds of free classes that I've done on this stuff, but the planetary order is really important. It goes Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn. Like I said earlier, Mercury has discrimination, but lacks wisdom, lacks judgment, because Mercury comes after Mars, because Mars is black and white, then Mercury brings variety, then Jupiter gives judgment, then Venus gives nuance and refinement. This is why Venus comes at that point. And then Saturn takes it all away. He's the last one. But the moon principle with children and the selfless love of the mother needs to evolve as the child is growing, and then it eventually becomes, then two adults, or, then begin to enter into the Venus relationship. Does that make sense? So, what makes us happy isn't always what makes us peaceful. And it's true, the moon wants peace. The moon is the mind that wants, it's really the opening through which everything is coming in. It's that connection to the heart where we want to flow with everything. And any place we feel that we have to say no, it hurts us in the heart, because we don't want to say no to anything. We want to feel that we're flowing with everything and feel one. That whole sense that I want to feel one with everything, that feeling comes from the moon. That feeling of, you and I are the same, and that kind of, it's Moon and Venus, but Moon is where we feel it in the heart. Try to make the difference between that pure feeling, like that innocent, pure feeling of a child, is the moon. That open, without a story, without a story going on, is the moon. That just pure openness, pure consciousness. Purity, because the moon is a sattvic planet. Purity. Venus is a rajasic planet. Active. There's a lot of, all the powers and all these details of the gunas and all that stuff. It's really where it all comes from. So with the moon, moon is the consciousness. We have to honor the purity of the mind by giving it pure stuff. Bringing it, the more we imbibe purity, like in environments like this, it really soothes our mind and heart. That's like the anchor of everything in our mind. Everything we take in through the moon. And so, when people have a problem with the moon, they're always protected. There's a fly. It's so funny. They're always protected, and they're cut off from the flow of everything that wants to flow into us. We want to be open and flowing. Just like a child is open. They're so beautiful. They're just like, or like animals, they're so open and flowing. That innocent opening through the heart is the moon. This is why the mother she can't do anything but love the child. She has no choice. It's just like, yeah.
Would then someone that has the moon so strong and vulnerable, would that need to be?
Yeah, people whose moon's very. I mean, we're all vulnerable, but I mean, we all feel these things. People who, like, let's say if they have a Cancer ascendant, or they have the moon in the first, or they have the moon that's very prominent, then they're going to feel very open, and what happens is they wind up picking up everybody's feelings. They're like an emotional sponge. And so they lose themselves. The moon is literally where we can lose ourselves.
But that's my case, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so we lose our identity and our like emotional reality in these situations because the moon is like a sponge. It just soaks everything up. And so people in that situation have to, for one thing, learn good boundaries, and not take on everybody's reality, and then feel wounded and victimized as a result. Because this is the other part of it, is that, feeling so easily wounded because they're so vulnerable and so ready to give over our identity. So the moon is that kind of thing, just like a child is vulnerable and open. So we're about at that time, so we could keep going for a long time. We can continue some of this in the next class, but the next class I'm going to be talking about how to select auspicious times, so I hope this was helpful in elevating the Venus principle. So we'll be coming back here at 8 o'clock. We're going to close with arati and prayers, right?